way back there.
Yes.
Mayor, we're trying to do this from virtual as well.
We didn't advertise a link or anything, so we can't do it.
I just want to make sure I didn't call for.
No, we didn't have a link, we didn't advertise it anymore, so we can't do that.
Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order, please, for the finance meeting. Should have gotten your agenda in your packet. There's two things that we need to add to the agenda. We had 3 budget amendments that come over from the school board. We'll go over those after the ones that we have here on the agenda.
Excuse me, Mr. Joe, can you turn your microphone on? I think it should be.
I'm sorry, I thought I did. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we had 3 additional budget amendments from the school board that we'd like to add to our agenda to look at tonight. Apologize to everybody for all the confusion with the weather and having to cancel meetings and move meetings. We tried to do the best we could with the situation at hand. I think the only one that we had to cancel for good that amounted to anything was the work session. And since we had so many in attendance at the steering committee meeting, there was really pretty much everything was covered there, we thought. So just didn't see a good time to try to work it in. So just tried to do away with it this month. I think we have everybody here on the committee except the 2 Garys. Mr. Bill, Gary Clarity, Gary Walsh. Mr. Clarity is in quarantine, and he let me know that today. He said he felt fine, but he had tested positive, so he was in quarantine. Mr. Johnson, Richard Johnson, is still over there at the hospital, so continue to remember both of them in your prayers. Also, Roger Gregory, that used to own the print shop, is in a bad way with COVID in summer. So please try to remember him. Richard is, that's my understanding. I just talked to him. He said he was in the hospital. I didn't really ask him which one. Minutes from the January 19th meeting are in front of you. Are there any corrections or additions or deletions that need to be made to those minutes? Mr. Harsh? I have a motion to approve the minutes as written, second by Mr. Buckmaster. Any discussion, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Minutes from the January 19th meeting are approved. Go over the trustees' reports of financial summaries for January. Before we go into this, I would like to let you know that our sales tax numbers for January are about a little over $30,000 above January 2020. So our sales tax revenues are still holding somewhere in that $20,000 to $30,000 a month increase. I think that's good news. Now that's of course split between schools and county. That's not 30 for both, it's 15 for both roughly. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that. To me, that's always good news when I see it in a positive side of things, such as that. On your trustees report, trial balance on the trustees report, of course, this is just actual dollars on hands, actual fund balances, or cash balances, not fund balances, actual cash balances. I guess you'd say money that's in the various accounts. And looking over those, it looks like everything is about where it should be. It's actually slightly ahead of where it was last year. Does anybody have any question on any of those categories on the trial balance? Any questions or comments? It's pretty self-explanatory. Also, Amy had put in your packet a comparison for January 2020 versus 2021 for the various, I guess you'd say the balances, highlights on the accounts. Found that to be very interesting and enlightening. Didn't see any big surprises there or anything that seemed to be out of line, other than the fact that we're in a lot better shape than we were last year, same time. That's what it told me. Any questions or comments on it? Mr. Governor?
Is that related to the fourth?
Yes, that's why we've got the asterisks out there, the grants that kind of skew the amount, because they're brought in, they're in revenue side that they weren't showing. But that is a grant. Yeah.
That makes no sense.
It's a grant, it just wasn't necessarily matching funds. Okay, we'll go into the financial statement, summary financial statement, 101 general fund. You're at the 7th month, so you're 58.3%. That's the magic number to keep in mind when you're looking at this. On the revenue side, if you're above that, you're above it. If you're below it, you did bring in kind of what you thought you were going to, or what you budgeted for. There's several categories that have exceeded what was in the budget. That look big percentage wise, but when you look at the actual dollars, a lot of times they don't really amount to a lot of dollars. Such as the mixed drink tax and business tax and some of those. Percentage wise, they're up. Your main money categories such as building permits and things of that nature are up. Sales tax, like we were talking about previously, is up more than we anticipated. Anybody got any questions on your 101? We broke out the state grants, the CARES Act grants, the TAMS funding, or CARES Act funding. That's what you see on page 3 that's highlighted in yellow, so that you can identify those funds, how much they were, and where they're showing up in your budget, just to make it a little easier to see those. Right now, Our budgeted revenues overall are at 78.6% of our budget. A lot of that is because of that about $1 million that's been added in from those. It's the revenue side of 101. Any questions on that? Yes, sir. No, we received an invoice this last month and one before that. Yeah, that one's off. Okay, 101. Any other questions? I'm sorry. Any other questions? Expenditures in 101. There again, you want to be under the 58.3, and just about every category there is. Some of them, like the preservation of records, that, you know, they spend it one time, so it's not likely to have anything else come through it. So that's going to hold what it is. The reoccurring ones are the ones that you want to look at, you know, to see for sure that you're in good shape on those. I didn't see anything that looked like it was an anomaly or really looked out of line. Yes. Which one? Yeah. When money comes in and out. There's a delay there usually of 2 to 3 months, something like that, for when we pay it and we get it back. But they've been real good about trying to get it back to us. Any other questions on your 101? There again, you're 52.7 of 58.3, so you're under budget in the 101 general fund. 111 urban services. There again, put the grant monies in there so that you could see them. There was $273,000 that was local government support funding from the state that actually went into our urban services district in lieu of what would have been the city of Hartsville type funding. That was one thing that the legislature overlooked initially. They cut out, if you were metro, thinking the big counties, that they weren't going to pay you twice. And we had to remind them that there's 2 small counties that very much need it. And they came back and amended that original bill so that we could get that additional funding. There again, money's come in, you're right at budget on the monies that have been spent going out. A few things that skew that a little bit was your streetscapes project. A lot of it been paid in the last quarter. We bought 2 cars. Right. There again, it should diminish over the months ahead.
So that's our own over there. That's ours.
Because they're still still arguing over their contract.
Sure, we'll go with that. That's something you want to address, Mr. Miller?
There are discussions that are going to be taking place in the near future. Okay, so we've got a meeting that is tentatively set up. It's a little anomalous year this year with regard to SROs by virtue of the fact that the mandates for the memorandum, we're obviously operating through a pandemic, so a little different circumstances that you normally would. There's also some legislative changes that are coming on the horizon that will affect the way we operate in the future on how that goes. Now I can go into the other issues with regard to county funding, and we just wait, however you want to do that, Mayor. I'll open it up if they want to discuss it now.
There is going to be an issue that comes, well, we're just going to let you know about it because we're following state law, but there's going to be a change in how the SROs are paid versus what we've been doing in the past, because that was not following state law. And as Mr. Miller said, there's other legislation that's coming down the pike that's going to change that even further. So that's why you're going to see the expense move from schools over to the sheriff's department. And basically it's because state law says that schools can't fund law enforcement. And those are law enforcement officers. So they have to be paid by the sheriff's department. So that's why you're going to see that move over, and next year's budget is going to be completely done by the sheriff's department, because that's what state law and Tennessee courts have held. Is that pretty decent summation, Mr.
That's a
Miller?
good summation of it. So it's kind of, so just thinking that way for the purpose of
2021, 2022 budget year, so fiscal year. So.
Mayor, do you have anything else to add on the 101 or 111?
No, sir. I think some of the questions already been asked, already been answered. So
116 solid waste. Above on revenues and below on expenditures. Any questions on it? Same thing with the ambulance service. 118. Over on revenues and a little bit over on budget. I think we had the 65%. They had some one-time purchases. They had some big purchases on medical supplies, I believe. I think it was at those cots, those the mechanical cot lifts with the big lift that came out of their budget. I think is one thing that's skewing quite a bit. Mr. Beatty watches that very closely. I'm sure if there was any problem with it, he would certainly let us know. Mayor, you're comfortable with that, I'm sure.
yes, sir. I think it all comes down to those cots that were powered to, because they had some injuries from EMTs lifting up the cots, and these are power cots. And they also had the attachments that they got that will do the compression, the chest compression, and free up one of the EMTs to do something else. And it'll maintain compressions as they're loading them into the vehicle and everything. So those expenses went in there, and that's why you saw an increase. Or it's kind of looks like it's ahead of where it is, but those are one-time expenditures.
121 is a pass-through special fund for Core Civic. County drug funds through the sheriff's department. That's your drug control fines and forfeitures with drug task force. It's basically an in and out type of account that we don't have a lot of control over. 131 highway fund. They're a little bit under budget on their revenues, but they're quite a bit under budget on the expenditures. I'm not sure what revenues has not come in for them.
It's the, Mr. Chairman, for good, the gas and motor fuel tax, as we went through the lockdowns and everything through the pandemic, I think there was about a 24% decrease
They've been down
in
quite.
travel miles. And so you're going to see that decrease as people travel less, they bought less fuel.
There's a month delay on it, so probably gonna be okay with it, but it's one that we need to watch, and I know they're watching it closely. Any questions on it? 141 is your general purpose school fund. Revenues, there again, this is December, not January. So we're in good shape on expenditures and revenues on it. Debt service, 151. Revenues, where contributions, 276. What is that? Okay, I thought they paid. Okay. That can pay.
So that will, yeah, the contributions line is shown a little less, that includes the first one, payments for the schools for the first year of the middle school report. We just have not seen this one yet, those, that's one for it later on, May.
Yeah. Trustees work real hard at trying to get us fair interest on the money that are sitting in the bank. I think that's reflected, her efforts are greatly reflected in this year's budget. So when you see her, please give her a thank you. Note, if you see there, down under expenditures, patrol cars, your final payment on those, and the one roll off number 2, final payment has been made on that. Later on, we'll get into a breakdown on all the county debt, because that was asked for. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Any questions on the 151 debt service fund at this point? We will go over the detail a little bit later.
Well, these patrol cars, this year's purchase patrol cars.
No,
That's right.
no, we've been paying cash on ever since we.
Okay. This was that year where we bought some of your.
Yeah.
Well, we bought like a lot.
I think about
I
4
think
or
they bought
5.
9.
9.
I think it was 9.
Education, 156 education debt services where your wheel tax money comes in. A little light, 55.2. There again, you have a lot of renewals in the springtime for some reason. I guess people are buying cars in the spring. Yeah, it's about that. From schools, that's the money that they pay in to us to go like on the roof project and stuff. They had paid us the interest, but not the principal. Okay. Okay. So, is that it? Am I missing a page? Yeah. We want to talk a little bit about this, we had questions about the debt service schedule. Amy, you want to explain what you gave us on that?
It should be.
This one?
That shows all the data throughout fiscal year 2027. Those are two big ones right now are, energy improvement for schools and criminal justice. Those are two big ones right now. Pay us off until 2037 on federal. Ones that we could possibly pay off, this year and possibly next year. Show cars and one of the, pickup trucks from the waste department, pay those off. And then next year, we could possibly pay out, two more loans, which is another trash truck, or two more trash trucks. But it just shows.
The information that y'all wanted.
These are those.
The only two variables are your ESR and your board.
Yeah. Some documents.
The maximum on those two are. Today on the
That's not hospital. Yes. Yeah, hospital. Next one.
6A. Maybe up to us to couple up and do what we need to do. Right now, yes, that will sunset and the revenue stream for it will sunset as well. Any questions on this? Is this the information that we've been asking for? Looks like it is to me. It'll be clear for you to understand.
On the bottom page, you'll have, what I use as my next schedule for this year, and then also for next year, how we do that.
Appreciate you doing it for us. It really helps, particularly going into budget season. That's a great deal. Got your little worksheet here for proposed tax revenue for your 141 from the other funds to give you some idea of how it's been trending or what Penny brings in the last 2 years, 3 years. And so we've got some sort of a worksheet, something to look at for next year. That's this sheet. Mayor, do you want to expand on that?
Yes, sir. Last year, the state legislature passed a law requiring that the local governing bodies set revenues for the department, for the Board of Education, and transmit that to them for use in preparing their budget. And they're supposed to have their budget submitted back by May 1st. So this is kind of what we've got as proposed tax revenue. We're kind of hamstrung by the fact that we don't know what the penny value is right now. So these numbers will change once we get that value. And I will say the comptroller's office told us last year, and it goes forward, just because that's what you put right now doesn't mean you can amend this later once you get this more information and see exactly what the numbers are. And these numbers can be changed all the way up to your third budget reading. So based on what we're seeing right now, this is what we were recommending, because we can't forecast what that penny value is. So we don't know what the property tax to set that at. But this is to move that process along so they can go ahead and do their budget, and then once they submit it back to us, these numbers will be changed once we have penny value and other more finite numbers. I'm sure they'll ask for you to increase some of them, and that'll be a discussion at that time.
So we're holding right now property tax at the same level as last year.
We're holding it at the same level as last year because, number one, we can project what we think they're gonna be, but we don't know what the penny value, the new penny value is gonna be. We expect it to go up, we just don't know what amount.
Why are we reducing TVA in lieu of taxes? Are they trending down? Have they
They're
told us
expected to
that
go,
we're-
the state has told us to expect those to go down for the next 3 years. That's paid. When the TVA was created, the federal government put in there a very convoluted formula for doing payment in lieu of taxes to the state, because since the TVA is a federally created agency or corporation, it cannot be taxed by the states. So they put in this legislation, a payment in lieu of tax program. The states get money based on the percentage of land the TVA owns in the state versus the total land they own, the amount of power sales in the state versus the total power sales, and 3 or 4 other factors that go up and down every year. The state has relayed to us to expect that to go down for the next 3 years. Exactly what the driver behind that is, I'm not sure. It could be a decrease in power sales. It could be selling of property. It could be several other factors. Once the TVA pays that to the state then has a statute that divvies up that money. So we've got 2 different structures divvying up that money, and the state has told us to expect over the next 3 years that those amounts are going to steadily go down.
Did they give you a percentage amount to expect, 10%, 5%?
They didn't give us an amount, they just said expect them to go down.
So this looks like basically 10% or a little lower.
It's trying to forecast a little bit what those numbers are going to be based on the direction we were given, which is very kind of vague.
Looks like you're taking in more than 2,000.
No, the wheel tax has nothing to do with, I'm sorry, are you talking still on the TVA payment in lieu of tax, or is this something else?
Less money projected next year, you did 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
Well, that's based on actual revenue. The budget, it's always behind or lower than what the actual revenue is. That's where
Right.
you budget on less revenue. That way because I think we're required to do, was it 95% at least? 92%. So your budget is always lower than what your actual revenues are. Just like we expect to come in this year, we expect it to be more than what should be substantially more than what we budgeted. But we don't know exactly what those numbers are going to be. And then going into next year, right now, we don't know what our penny value is. We expect it to go up, but we don't know what that amount is. We won't know for at least 2 or 3 more months. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The state only has the state.
Well, once we figure out what the penny, we figure out what property taxes are going to be with the penny value, we actually budget on 92% of that total amount. That way we've got that 8% there to play around with in case revenues come in a little bit lower. And that's pretty much required by the state. That's common practice. So
We usually do a lot better than that, and I guess a lot of kids don't.
well, there's some.
We had about 37%.
Well, there are some counties that are economically depressed and they're not experiencing what we're experiencing, or they're not setting out an hour away from one of the hottest cities in the United States. But that's why you see this is budgeting conservatively on that, knowing that our revenues almost every year come in substantially more than what we budgeted. But as I said, as far as the property tax, we don't know what to set that is at because we don't know what our penny value is going to be.
Those numbers, such as your sales tax numbers, that's probably going to be substantially, well, not substantial, but somewhat more than what you're showing there. And so,
Last year, year before.
but we have to have something to start looking at. And We know that our sales tax estimate is trending up. We know that we're gonna, they've told us that TVA and lieu payments are gonna go lower. So just trying to find that magic balance there, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Try to reach conservative figure.
Yes.
Well, it's pretty much holding it. We know our sales tax revenue is going up. We know our property tax revenue is going up. Sales tax is iffy based on current economic conditions. Our property tax, we don't know what it's gonna be because we don't know what our penny value is. So we held the line on what it is right now, knowing that once we get some of those figures, that number is gonna go up. Those revenue numbers are actually gonna go up for the schools. We just don't know what right now. That's why I was saying, just because this is what we're suggesting that is passed and transmitted to the schools as the revenues, those numbers will be changed once we get penny value and all this stuff, and it will be amended at that time. And that's what the comptroller's office has suggested last couple of years when we kind of went back and forth with the schools. They said, you can go ahead, transmit a number to them, and then amend that later, all the way up till you pass your budget. So just right now, since we don't know what the penny value is, and then some of these other things, once we get closer to that, we'll know what those revenues look like, and then we can come back and change it at that time, which I'm pretty sure the schools are going to insist on. But right now, as I said, we don't know what that penny value is.
Okay, let's move on into our budget amendments. Our 101 general fund, we had 2021 10120 CARES Courts video arraignment equipment. This is funding that was received through the Tennessee CARES Act, and we're just using a portion of this for the video arraignment equipment in courtrooms. I think that total received was $330,000, and we're looking at using $11,000 for these for this purpose of those things.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
We need to go back to the previous budget, or the previous agenda item. That needs to be voted on so we can transmit that to the schools.
Okay.
Yes, the proposed revenues, that's what we're required by statute to set proposed revenues, transmit that to the schools so they can use that as their budget. And then they will transmit a budget back to us by May 1st.
And we can do this without having the penny value.
Yes, because the comptroller's office has told us, you can go ahead and transmit a revenue and then amend your numbers later once you get your numbers come in. They asked us not to let that hold us up.
Mr. Hart.
Move to approve the proposed tax revenue for Fund 141 for the schools.
And have a second by Mr. Ford, motion by Mr. Harsh, and a second by Mr. Ford to approve this proposed tax revenue for the 141 fund, so that the school can get their budget process going. Everybody understand what we're voting on? Now, what we need to do this in commission as well? I would think.
Yes, sir,
so.
Mr. Miller
Okay.
highly recommends doing it, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any questions on it? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. It does carry. It will be, we will take it up in the next hour as part of our other business. Okay. All right, back to this budget amendment on the 101. Any questions on it? Gregory? Motion to approve. Ms. Jones makes a second. Have a motion and a second to approve this budget amendment. Any questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we will recommend it to the full body. Okay. The next one is library. This is BA 10121. Moving some money. The library was awarded a technology grant, and it was a 50-50 match. They're moving money out of, where are they moving from? What is this doing? I'm lost. Is this for the 50/50 or is this put the 50/50 matching? Exactly what it is.
That is our.
That's our 50% match. Okay, and it's coming from where?
Study for rates, so we are receiving the number.
It's where we've received that amount of money and we're spending it for this purpose. Okay, just want to be sure. What we're doing. Have a motion to approve this by Mr. Ford, second by Ms. Johnson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll move it to the full body. Let's see, 3 that came in from the school board, I believe. BA 2021-141-14, $2,400. Are all of these just moving monies around?
Yes.
Okay. And this is for regular instruction program to the account for the proper category for a bonus payment. And BA 2021-141-15 is $28,675 with special education program to a supervisor's salary due to a program change, just moving money from one line item to another. 2021-141-16 is $151,462. It's trying to get this strategic compensation payments into the corresponding correct categories. Do you mind explaining that a little bit more, Dr. Hatfield?
Well, you know, each year when we budget, we put our our strategic compensations in 71, 100, 185. That way everybody can see it. And then when it gets time to pay those out, all those teachers are not in 71, 100, 116. Some are in 7 categories, 7,200 and something. Some are in vocational, some are in special ed. So what we do then is take that money and put it in the right categories. So at the end of the year, you'll see where it was expended, but at the beginning of the year, you'll see where it's budgeted. And that works a lot better for everybody that's watching budget line items. We've done it for years.
Any questions about those? Just moving funds within their budget. We can take them all at one, I think. What's the will of the body? Mr. Mark, Walsh. Make a motion. Mr. Walsh makes a motion to approve all of them. To the board of the body, Ms. Johnson makes the second. Yes, sir.
Motion to approve.
Makes a motion to approve. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. They are done. I think that's all the budget amendments we had at the time. Okay. We have several discussion on the CARES Act grant funding. I think, Mayor, you were just kind of going to go over those and delineate the differences in those various ones because we've had some confusion on in times past.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Basically, it's the last page where you get to the bar graph there that Ms. Amy put together for the debt service.
Where it says CARES Act grant funding.
Yes, sir, that's it. It says CARES Act grant funding. If you look about, I guess probably 60% way down the page, there's a line that separates the CARES Act, which is a federal grant of funds, from the local government state funding, which was put in the budget by Governor Lee and passed by the state legislature. That is state funds. The CARES Act, as it says in here, is passed, signed by President Trump on March 27th. That is a lot of the funds people hear. Now, some of the things were specific allocations. You got Citizen Center, Senior Citizen Center. Those went to various programs for senior citizens. Some of them couldn't get out of their home due to being high risk. They're bringing food to them, and this is in addition to any other Meals on Wheels programs. Some funds were specifically designated to go to libraries for technology to allow them to people participate online, PPE equipment and other things for the libraries. Election commission, since we had a presidential election and all the other federal and state and local elections across the country coming up, they put allocations in there for elections throughout the United States. And that's where we've seen several budget amendments come across for elections. Those were specific allocations going directly to them for that specific purpose. They couldn't be used for anything else. They also gave basically what is a block grant to the states. And when you see the thing that says TN CAMS, the state was given this money. They had to allocate it in accordance with the CARES Act. And they did it through an online system they put together called CAMS, which I believe was CARES Act Management System. So that was the $330,360. You'll see it's the last item on the CARES Act funding part. We submitted 734,000. We were capped at $330,360. So we've received our maximum amount we were able to get. And then so far we've allocated some of that to radios for the digital switchover for the ambulance service, $20,000 to do the wage study. And then tonight you voted on one that's $11,000 at the request of Judge Kane and the courts to do video arraignment systems. That way they don't have to bring prisoners from Trousdale Turner. They don't have to bring inmates over for the jail for certain court proceedings. They can do that video and keep that facility hopefully more COVID free. Those are all federal allocations. That came from the United States government, has nothing to do with the state of Tennessee other than they gave them a block grant and told them to delegate it out. And that was only for that specific thing of what went through CAMS. The next section says local government state funding. That is funds that Governor Lee put in his budget and the state legislature passed to allocate some of their revenue excesses to the states to make up for loss of revenues. And at the local level, such as Nashville, I think they had huge losses due to tourism and whatnot. And other states, other local governments had losses. That's the ones that was originally going to be tied to COVID. Before the legislature went on their break last year due to COVID, when they came back, they amended all that to take any strings off of it because they had so many local governments that were losing revenue and were worried about how they were going to make that up. So they took all the strings off and let the local governments allocate it as they needed it. That we received, the General Services Fund received $734,094, and the Urban Services received $273,000. And I'm gonna have to amend something I said. I misspoke on the CARES Act. That money, the only thing we've allocated for that was $11,000 for the video arraignment. The emergency services radio equipment and the wage study came out of the local government support grant from the state. So I misspoke on that. This is, like I said, it was $734,000, and we've allocated $45,005 for the emergency services radio equipment. That is due to a digital switchover. They're going from analog to digital radios. And then we allocated $20,000 for the wage study. And urban services, the $273,000, none of that has been dedicated yet. I have been in discussions with the highway department for some funds that they'd like to use it for. And I'd also like to look at any needs of our door-to-door trash service. Then also there are some sidewalks and parking lots and work that needs to be done around town. So we're looking at that as well. But as of yet, no money has been allocated from that. So I'll go ahead and answer any questions on those funds now if I need to explain a little bit more.
Questions of the mayor? I know we've had a lot of questions on it times past. I think we were assuming it was one lump of money and didn't realize it was coming from different places, and some earmarked and some not. Hope this gives us a little bit more clarification on it.
And I will say Governor Lee has put in his budget proposal another round of what can be called this local support grant. I think we were scheduled to get 500 and something thousand out of that. Of course, that needs to go through the budget process and make it through the legislature before we get those funds, but that is included in Governor Lee's allocation. But those strings have been put back on this fund. It can only be used for 5 different allocations. Some of them are capital improvements, technology, and you're gonna have to forgive me, the other 3 are escaping me right now, but they all pretty much are COVID related or something that is along those lines that they've looked at losses over this last year. So that money will have strings to it, whereas this current round they gave out does not.
Any questions? Okay. I think that covers everything we had down on our agenda. Any comments from the public? Anybody here from the public like to make a comment or have a question? Don't see any. Motion, Mr. Walsh, to adjourn. Second by Ms. Jones. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. I've been better. I've been good. Breathing's better. That would be 75. If we do that on the budget,
I think we're going to do the same.
how much time?